Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Disparate Post Ireland, coming to you from the fair city of Dublin. I am your host, Frank Lennon. In this episode we will take a short but revealing look at the history of private bin charges in the Dublin 15 area and the phase-in period which led us to where we are today. Why specifically Dublin 15, you may well ask? It is simply because I live in that part of Dublin and therefore have direct experience of the range of bin charges which have been operating there. I have little doubt that throughout the country, to a greater or lesser extent, households may have had similar experiences. So, without further ado, let's travel back 15 years to 2002, the point at which we, in Dublin 15, got our first taste of what was progressively, and as so many had predicted, to develop into an increasingly costly change in the administration of local refuse collection. Prior to the 4th of March 2002, we received this notification from our local Fingal County Council, which, as you can see, exclaimed, "Attention householders, important news from Fingal County Council. You only pay for what you throw away. Introduction of environmental charge in the Fingal area from the 4th of March 2002. At this stage, we were dealing with black and green wheelie bins only. The black wheelie bins were the first to be distributed, and the green bins followed soon thereafter. At some later point, the brown wheelie bins were added to the local household wheelie bins fleet. A bin tag system was to operate. Tags were to be purchased in designated local news agents. Despite the fact that additionally we were still paying via central taxation for our refuse services, no tag, no bin lift became the council mantra. The start price for a black bin tag was €5 for a 240 litre bin, that's the largest one, and €2.50 for a 120 litre bin. In situations where people had not, as yet, been supplied with green bins, a discount tag price of €3 for a 240 litre black bin and €1.50 for a 120 litre black bin applied. Clearly, it was acknowledged at this very early stage that these new additional charges were likely to cause financial hardship in many households, because this important statement, as you can see, featured near to the bottom of the Fingal County Council flyer. Please note, a waiver of charges scheme is in operation. If you think you are eligible for a waiver, application forms are available at your local post office, library, health centre and council office. That last statement is very important because it is one of the hallmarks of a just society. That is, a concern for the impact of increased taxation on the vulnerable. As with all schemes which involve additional charges to the public, typically there are nudges and inducements by way of encouraged compliance. Such was the case with this inducement, the complimentary bin tag supplied to every household with wheelie bins in the Dublin 15 area. We confirmed our absorption into this new additional payments for refuse collection scheme by the use of the complimentary Fingal County Council bin tag on the 9th of May 2002. And so, with the two inducements of complimentary bin tags and a bin charges waiver scheme under our collective community belts, our family launched into the new additional bin charges scheme proper with the deployment of our first €5 yellow bin tag on the 22nd of August 2002. We need to bear in mind here that up until this point, for as far back as could be remembered, there had been a reliable Fingal County Council, once weekly, all binnable household refuse bin collection. In addition, once in a while, Fingal County Council had organised a special collection of unwanted household items which were too big to dispose of in conventional sized dustbins of that time. A notification would be sent to each household in selected areas a week or so in advance of these special collections, and householders would then place their items for disposal out at the road verge the night before each collection. Up to the point of bin tag implementation, and for 10 years thereafter, these public community services were funded entirely as appropriate from direct taxation. Okay, we're into the bin tag zone now. From 2002 through 2007, revenue from bin tags, in addition to central taxation charges, funded our public refuse collection services. In 2008, an additional standing charge of €60 per annum was introduced. Incredibly, in the following year, 2009, 3 years before privatisation of refuse collection services, the annual standing charge was raised by 84% to €110 per annum. The standing charge remained at that level until January 2016, at which point the issue of pay by weight was pushed onto the agenda by the Irish Waste Management Association, one of the 30,000 private, corporate, lobbyist organisations operating in the EU. So let's step back a bit to 2010 and consider what Fingal County Council, local government, but government nonetheless, were guaranteeing to the Dublin 15 community. Fingal County Council stated, and I quote, "We guarantee every home is offered 3 collection types: dry recycling, biodegradable and landfill waste. 2. We guarantee a commitment to protection of the environment and commit to meet the requirements of the Environment Protection Agency and EU. 3. We guarantee to offer a service to all our citizens. 4. We guarantee our decisions are not motivated by profit. 5. We guarantee a charging system simple, fair and transparent, and gives full cost control to the customer. 6. We guarantee value for money. The average annual cost of our complete service to Fingal householders this year is €200. All of our prices are VAT inclusive. 7. We guarantee that full cost control will remain with our customers. A 100% guarantee was given by Fingal County Council in relation to all 7 of the foregoing. In addition, Fingal County Council declared the following. 1. We have 73 bring banks throughout Fingal. 2. We have 2 major recycling centres in Swords and Coolmine. 3. We had a recycling rate in 2009 of 55%. 4. We provide a bulky waste disposal service. So just to reiterate what Fingal County Council was saying, while our refuse collection service was still in public ownership, and I quote, "Our complete service to Fingal householders this year, including VAT, is €200. That suggested €3.84 per week per Fingal household. In 2010, refuse collection costs to our family were as follows: bin tags €88 and standing charge €110, total €198, or €3.80 per week. Price per bin tag that year was €8. So far, so expected. What happened next? Well, a couple of charts might be useful at this point. This chart relates to the trajectory in the cost of bin tags over the 12-year period 2002 to 2014. Although there were concession-priced €3 bin tags available in 2002 for 240-litre black bins, because Fingal County Council had supplied our household with both black and green wheelie bins prior to the bin tag system introduction, our household starter cost was €5 per bin tag. So from 2002 until 2005, €5 remained the price of the bin tag. During 2005, bin tag prices rose to €6, and during 2006, prices moved up again to €7.50. In 2007, yet another price increase saw the bin tag cost move up to €8. Clearly, with the sustained upward cost in bin tags, the government feared a backlash, because in 2007 they decided to introduce a partially mitigating annual tax refund based upon the number of bin tags used in a given year. From 2007 until 2012, €8 remained the price of a bin tag. However, in 2012, the tax refund was withdrawn, and voila, public refuse services were privatised. In 2013, up goes the price of bin tags again, this time to €9.66. And because public refuse services were now privatised, the bin charge waiver system disappeared. So, as we can see from this chart, from introduction in 2002 through to privatisation in 2013 and into 2014, the price of a 240-litre black wheelie bin tag rose by a staggering 93% overall, which represents average year-on-year increases of 9% over those 12 years. I would lay a solid bet on the fact that few, if any, working person's salaries rose by 9% year-on-year over that same period. Our second chart looks at the same period, 2002 to 2014. But on this occasion, we examine the trajectory of what I describe as gross charges, that is, bin tags and standing charges combined. Once again, I have taken the example of 6 240-litre black bin lifts over a 12-month period in the Dublin 15 area. We see that from 2002 to 2005, bin charges were €30 per annum. In 2006, the per annum cost rose to €45. In 2007, the per annum cost rose again to €48. In 2008, with the introduction of a €60 per annum standing charge, the cost rose again to €108. And in 2009, with the increase in the standing charge to €110, the per annum refuse collection additional cost rose to €158. In 2013, the year following privatisation, and due to some accounting adjustment by our private refuse collection service provider, the per annum collection cost dipped to €148. However, in 2014, the per annum additional refuse collection cost rose again, this time upward to €167.96. Just to reiterate, the tax allowance scheme, which had been introduced in 2007, together with the bin charge waiver scheme, were removed upon privatisation of refuse collection services in 2012. In addition, no indication was given by government that on foot of these new private charges, citizens were no longer contributing also via central taxation to refuse collection services. So, In summary, we can see clearly from this chart that a swinging increase of 460% in refuse collection charges took place over the 12-year period 2002 to 2014. Such a level of cumulative increase represents, on average, a staggering 36% year-on-year increase refuse collection costs to the community. Did any ordinary working person between 2002 and 2014 receive a year-on-year salary increase of 36% in their wages or salaries? I would imagine that such people are as scarce as hen's teeth. Our third chart looks at the annual average consumer price index trajectory for the period 2002 to 2014. The trajectory starts in 2002 at an index level of 108.75 and ends in 2014 at an index level of 101.50, which revealingly indicates that the CPI trend was markedly down, with the index finishing the 12-year period down by a level of 7.25 points. Contrast this with the year-on-year refuse collection charge increases of, on average, 36% for the same period. One simply must ask the question, what was going on? In 2014, I wrote a blog article entitled, "The New Water Charges Will Only Cost the Two-Person Household €5 per week, right?" In the article, I referenced refuse charges and the runaway manner in which those charges were allowed to shoot up in the lead-in to the privatisation of refuse collection and beyond. In relation to standing charges, this is what I said, and I quote from my article. "What about standing charges? Aha! Now that, I believe, was a nice little fattening up exercise. But standing charges for what, you may well ask? Well, in my humble opinion, something had to be done by government to sweeten the pie so as to make the service commercially attractive in preparation for privatisation. You know, set up a solid revenue stream. In taxman parlance, that would translate as creating a sustainable revenue base. Yeah, just like family home tax, right? In addition to the requirement to affix bin tags, in 2008, Fingal County Council introduced a €60 standing charge for refuse collection for that year. In 2009, the standing charge was pushed up to €110. That is a whopping 83% increase." Unquote. Such significant shifts as public utility privatisations don't happen overnight. Prevailing political and economic dogma must first take hold, and then its high priests must move in for the kill. As we have seen, things first began to be steered around in terms of the ultimate privatisation of refuse collection services with the introduction of wheelie bin refuse segregating and bin tags in 2002. Let's look back 5 years, starting from 2002, and see what political parties were in power in the lead-up to additional refuse collection charges being stealthily introduced. Well, in 1998, we had the Fianna Fáil Progressive Democrat coalition in power. That political configuration lasted in government until 2006. In 2007, we got a Fianna Fáil Progressive Democrat and Greens combination. In 2009, we got a Fianna Fáil, Greens and Independents combination. In 2011, we got a Fine Gael and Labour combination, and in 2016 we got a Fine Gael and Independents combination. So, all of that brings us up to the present year, 2017. So, What then, in my opinion, were the likely political influences which imposed upon us the privatisation of public refuse collection services and accelerated the drive into recycling? Well, my money goes firmly on the following. Number 1. Likely Fianna Fáil business connections, as they were the majority influencers in political matters over the 13 years 1998 to 2010. Number 2. The Progressive Democrats, a right-wing, business-oriented party who firmly looked towards the US for privatisation's inspiration and who wielded political influence over the 11 years 1998 to 2008. Number 3, to a lesser degree, in the matter of recycling, which of course is not a bad thing, the Green Party, who had some political influence over the 4 years 2007 to 2010. In my humble opinion, the two political groupings, one of which is now defunct, which together must take the lion's share of the blame for imposing what has become an out-of-control refuse collection cost scenario upon hard-pressed communities all around Ireland, are Fianna Fáil and the now defunct Progressive Democrats. This fourth chart traces the trajectory in black wheelie bin lifts, that is, household refuse purported to be going to landfill from our household in the period 2002 to 2014. The chart in the round clearly shows very significant compliance in relation to refuse segregation and the facilitation of recycling. From 11 black bin lifts in 2002, we had need to elevate disposals between 2003 and 2007, with an average of 21 black bin lifts per year required in that period. However, from 2007 to 2014, the number of black bin lifts required from our household was radically reduced from 22 in 2007 to just 2 in 2014. So, good for us. We were playing our part in the National Waste Recycling Programme, and this, I might add, despite the fact that during the same period, as viewers have already seen, our community was experiencing average year-on-year increases of 36% in overall refuse collection service costs. Given that during the period in question, the annual standing charge, together with black bin tag costs, were to pay for black, green and brown bin content collection, we must now ask the very important question: was the recycling behaviour of our household, in combination with other households who may have similarly complied with the National Recycling Scheme, good for the profits bottom line of our local privatised refuse collection service? I don't think it would take a genius to figure out the answer to that question. Okay, people, we need to throw off our ostrich feathers now. We need to realise that the most recent attempt, started in 2016 by the private lobby group, the Irish Waste Management Association, to press gang both government and communities into paying even more again for refuse collection services, is nothing more than a rent-seeking exercise. In 2016, there were no less than 70 private refuse collection outfits operating within the 26 counties. There is absolutely no way that such a large number of private operators would continue to exist in a service area such as refuse collection and recycling if there wasn't already a substantial and sustainable profit to be made. They would never have got into such an area of business in the first place. We, the collective patsies, have absorbed all of those refuse collection cost increases from 2002 up to the present time, and indeed have also been forced to absorb the associated value-added tax as well. Again, we the collective patsies sat back and allowed the Irish private refuse collection companies to enjoy, as part of their profits mix, thousands of euros worth of deposits which should have come back to the community in the form of refunds on cans, bottles and papers returned, etc. Such has been facilitated for many years now in other European countries. Perhaps I'm betraying my age here, but when I was in my youth, we had a guy named Harry Littman who owned a recycling yard in the vicinity. Harry recycled all manner of materials: car batteries, lead pipes, bottles, tins, copper, etc. As kids, we used to collect papers, bottles and tins and head to Harry's. He would weigh what we brought and give us a few bob for it. Harry was before his time in recycling, and the kiddie activity I have just described was situation normal in those days. It taught the kids about the value of recycling and positively reinforced that behaviour in the kids with minor financial reward. So, in these so-called more enlightened times, there is absolutely no way that communities who assiduously beaver away in recycling should be penalised through denial of refunds on deposits. We need action on this one right now from government. You see, the twist in our current story of likely further inflating refuse collection charges is somewhat like the Oliver question. Please, sir, can I have some more? Profits. That, the real question, has been cleverly disguised under layers of polluter must pay speak and the repeated mantra of EU corporate empire diktat from the private business lobby group, the Irish Waste Management Association. Our community have absorbed enough gruelling refuse collection charge increases over the last 15 years. Enough is enough. As a greater community, we need to wake up, recognise this fact, and simply refuse to accept any further increases without clear, justified, and independently audited financial evidence pointing to the legitimate need for any such increases. What had the private business lobby group, the Irish Waste Management Association, been saying starting in 2016? And what exactly were they looking for? It's going to take us a little while to consider this, but it is important that we persevere. Before we review an article penned by Cleona Russell in the journal.ie of the 10th of January 2016, we need to understand this. The group of so-called free market private refuse collectors currently operating in Ireland are comprised of industry titans and industry minnows. After we have decoded the article in question, you will get no prizes for identifying whose views, titans or minnows, the article likely reflects. So, to some quotations from the article then, the title of which is "Fears Bin Charges Will Rise as New Pay-by-Weight System Rolls Out This Year." And I quote, "From this summer, your bin charges will be calculated by weight. The pay-by-weight system, which will come into effect from the 1st of July, will see flat-rate annual charges banned. The new system has raised fears that bills could increase." Unquote. Well, firstly, no indication was given in the article whether the so-called pay-by-weight system would be applied to green and brown bins as well as black bins. Flat fee annual charges will be banned. I simply must ask, who labours under the illusion that our community over the last 15 years have been enjoying flat fees for refuse collection? Absolutely no such thing. Since privatisation, and indeed before that, annual fees for refuse collection comprised standing charge and cost of bin tags per bin lift. To attempt to suggest otherwise is a misleading nonsense. I quote again from the article. Head of Waste Management at Irish Waste Management Association Conor Walsh told thejournal.ie, "It's not a new charge, it's an existing charge. It has been policy in Ireland for a long time that we have to pay by use." Unquote. I find the former statement quite amazing. In fact, on two levels, I find it truly disingenuous. One, it will most definitely, for at least 200,000 members of our greater community, as Mr. Walsh goes on to actually confirm later in the article, be a new charge. Anything which people are forced to pay over and above existing payments is of course a new charge. And two, in relation to a requirement in Ireland to pay by use, we already do that. We do it by payment for every black landfill bin lift which takes place, and have done so over the last 15 years at a consistently increasing cost level. Back to the article, and I quote, "In the past it has been a bit irregular. Different companies were interpreting pay by use in their own way. This requires that everyone is charged by kilo." Unquote. Interpreting pay by use in their own way. There can only be one interpretation of pay by use, and that simply is that you pay the service provider for the service you receive. The present method of paying being by standing charge and bin tag price per black bin lift. Should there be legitimate justification for increasing either standing charge or bin tag cost, then the system is already in place to facilitate that. Back to the article again, and I quote, Walsh referred to a study taken by the Department of Environment which found that pay per kilo was the most effective for waste prevention and recycling, adding, "It has been proven to be very effective. It's in place already in Dún Laoghaire, and as soon as it was introduced, the amount of waste people were putting into their bins reduced by 20 to 25% instantly." Unquote. Study taken, eh? Was such a study necessary? Who commissioned the study? What were the terms of reference of the study? Were householders' views taken into account as part of the study? We just get the bald statement, "read a study," and its purported outcome, which, totally coincidentally, happens to fit neatly with the views of the private lobby group, the Irish Waste Management Association. Dún Laoghaire reduce waste levels by 20 to 25% instantly, eh? Well, as viewers will know, and as confirmed by a chart earlier in this video, our family alone in the Dublin 15 area, under the existing and annual increased refuse collection charge regime, reduced its black bin landfill lift requirement by a most impressive 91.67% over the 10-year period 2004 to 2014. So, study or no study, it is absolute nonsense to attempt to suggest that pay per kilo is the only manner of waste prevention. The article again, and I quote, Walsh said that 1.2 million houses in the country get their bins collected, adding, "We expect 1 million people to pay less just from people's behaviour. People who pollute more by putting out more waste will pay more." He added that the new system will help Ireland comply with EU regulations. Unquote. Right. First we have the admission that at the very least 200,000 people are likely to pay more. Good to get that fact out of the way. People and amount of waste they put out. So, are we now into the ball game of potentially victimising a large cohort of our vulnerable citizens who merely through the act of living, ageing and perhaps falling ill may need to dispose of more items than their younger and healthier neighbours? How socially just is that? Pay per kilo requires a weighing mechanism on each refuse collection vehicle. In similar vein, every fuel delivery vehicle must have a meter which monitors and reports on fuel volume dispensed. In every purchase transaction, a customer is entitled to a receipt. when a central heating fuel truck is delivering to our home, I receive a literage record docket, which confirms to me a start number, an end number, and volume in litres of the fuel which had been delivered into our central heating tank. No mention of this for refuse collection trucks. Why not? If you pay per litre for heating fuel and get a receipt, then if you pay by kilo for refuse takeaway, you should also be entitled to a receipt which shows the scales on the refuse truck being set back to zero pre-lift and the kilo read after lift. Without such provision, there would be a significant scope for machine error or even for mass fraud. On the matter of compliance with EU corporate empire regulations, well, that hoary old chestnut is pulled out and used whenever it suits corporate lobbying interests. There have been instances in the past where Ireland has coasted along for years and not implemented particular EU regulations. There are other EU countries, in fact, who choose to ignore selected EU regulations and no issues are made of it. Back to the article again, and I quote, "The waste industry won't be getting any extra money. It will mean less revenue for the waste companies, but it will also mean less cost for them too. Bin companies have already brought in weighing technology needed on their trucks for the new system. There will be some consolidation in the market on the back of this," Walsh added. "At least 70 waste companies are expected to consolidate down to 40, unquote. The waste industry won't be getting any extra money, eh? I have to say, that statement is a verifiable untruth, an untruth which was confirmed as such by the very same person making the statement. Earlier in the article, was it not Mr. Walsh who stated that 1.2 million people get bins collected and that 1 million people are expected to pay less? So that leaves 200,000 people who by extension will pay more, or in the very least of situations, some may pay the same. Bin companies have already brought in weighing technology. I think, if ever, there was any confirmation needed that this pay-by-weight thing is really all about padding up the bottom line. This has to be it. Around the same time as the article we are examining appeared in the journal.ie, a representative from the private corporate lobby group, the Irish Waste Management Association, IWMA, was interviewed in relation to pay-by-weight introduction on News Talk. During the interview, the person in question stated that refuse collection companies had paid €25,000 per truck to have the weighing gear installed. So, supposing your refuse collection company has 10 trucks on the road, that's a total investment of €250,000. Are we, the so-called polluters and payers, expected to believe that such an investment would be made on the off chance that the money might be recouped via higher charges, and made long in advance of such a scheme being activated? Indeed, pigs fly. Consolidation of services, or put another way, the titans eating the minnows. The truth always leaches out between the lines. Kill off the competition and you can up your charges at will. So our decoding of the journal article, and indeed all that has gone before in this video, should alert hard-pressed Irish consumers to the ruse which the IWMA has been using to lever additional profit out of our communities. It is simply not good enough. The once public service of refuse collection and recycling, which was paid for on a cost-only basis, should never have been allowed to drift out of the public arena in the first place. And garbage it is. On the 6th of July 2017, in the Irish Times, Tim O'Brien penned an article with the title, "Panda's Tough New Bin Rules Start Next Week." The associated byline read, "Fines for wrong use of green, brown and black bins." Before we review Tim's article, I have to lay my cards on the table by saying that, in my view, what we are looking at here is an industry titan, private refuse collector and recycler in the midst of going rogue. In Dublin 15, we have been pushed so far away now from the excellent and once economic cost of provision-based Fingal County Council local refuse collection and recycling service as to be out in another dimension entirely, a dimension of rent-seeking, fascist-type behaviour from an utterly unaccountable private business. To my mind, much of what is being proposed here, to say the very least, is questionable, and likely an abuse of the community which it purports to serve. Its likes must be challenged, and its outright intrusiveness must immediately be curtailed. The company in question is a refuse collection company, not a local government. And so to Tim's article, and I quote, "New rules to fine home owners who fail to segregate waste properly will come into force next week by one of the country's largest waste collection companies, Panda Waste. Amended contracts, which are dated July 11th, have already been circulated to some of the company's 150,000 households, mainly in Leinster, including Dublin. The bin company has been plagued by a growth in the percentage of green bin waste that has been soiled by non-recyclable waste, which makes recycling more expensive and more difficult. Earlier this year, Panda began trials using cameras to photograph green bin waste in a bid to discourage contamination by people trying to evade higher black bin charges. Under the new contracts being issued by the bin company, customers will be fined between €10 and €25 for putting contaminated waste in any of its green, brown or black bins. In common with many other waste companies, Panda offers green bins for dry recyclables, brown bins for composting, and black bins for household waste. The new contracts specify that contaminated waste in black bins include, but is not limited to, paint, electrical equipment, batteries, organic waste including food and hazardous materials. Unacceptable waste in brown bins will include plastic bags and bottles, packaging of any sort, nappies, glass, stones, soil, metals, wire, cardboard, ashes, coals or cinder, pet feces or litter, and cooking oils. Contaminated waste in green bins will include glass, clothes, nappies, food and garden waste, aeroboard, polystyrene, styrofoam, electrical equipment, batteries, liquids, oil, plastic film, bags unless empty, fluorescent bulbs and tubes. The Panda contracts are believed to be the first time since the government's decision to scrap flat rate charging that firms have sought to amend customer agreements. Panda does not send any waste to landfill, and its website states that all of its waste is recycled. Unpaid fines will be levied, with a 1% per month compound interest charge on overdue accounts. It also includes the right to enter on customers' property to inspect bins, the right to alter charges in light of government regulations or other factors, such as a rise in fuel costs, additional charges for hazardous waste, which require immediate payment, a charge of €15 on unpaid direct debit instalments, a charge of €30 for cleaning a bin at the end of a contract. Panda says it shall not be liable for any loss or damage whatsoever due to Panda's failure to deliver or perform the services promptly or at all. The customer should indemnify Panda for any loss or damage to the bins. The customer should accept full responsibility for any costs or liability due to the bins obstructing any persons or property or being in a location they should not be. Describing the contracts as worrying, Dublin West TD Jack Chambers said Panda is now going to impose significant penalties and fines on households where the wrong item is put in the wrong bin. A cereal box or water bottle accidentally disposed of could end up costing families a big fine, he said, adding that he was alarmed that it is seeking the right to enter people's property to inspect bins. They are granting themselves more powers than on Garda Síochána when it comes to entering property. This illustrates that companies are bringing in whatever stealth charges and rules they wish. They are operating almost as a law unto themselves, he said, adding that the government has failed to help the public to properly identify waste categories, unquote. Now consider this. Firstly, the reason why this arrogant private company can threaten such fines is because during 2016 they press-ganged their customers into signing up for an electronic-based pay-in-advance scheme in which a minimum of at least €20 must be retained at all times. Here is an experience which I had some years ago with the same company. It had been Green Bin Collection Day. At the end of the day, when I went to pull my green bin back in, I discovered it had not been emptied. When I opened the lid, I noted that two small 6-inch square pieces of chipboard were resting on top of an otherwise appropriately filled bin. Sometime earlier that week, I had a guy in the house doing some minor carpentry work. I was aware that my green bin was full and ready for lift, so I had no need or reason to open the lid again. What I was not aware of was that apparently Mr. Carpenter Man had placed two small pieces of chipboard into what he obviously thought was the appropriate recycle bin. Immediately when I saw the two tiny pieces of chipboard, I knew that they were probably the reason why the bin was not lifted. However, I thought to myself, why didn't the bin person not simply take the two pieces from the top of the recycled pile and leave them on the verge for me to take back in and empty the bin? If he thought there was more chipboard deeper in the bin, why didn't he simply knock on the door to inquire, rather than simply abandon the bin which obviously required to be discharged? I was annoyed. I was very annoyed. But I decided that I was neither going to waste my time, energy or money phoning up the contractor, because at that time, while it was a nuisance, it was but a minor nuisance. However, if the situation which I experienced was to be re-experienced in the fining scenario which we have just heard about in Tim O'Brien's article, then we would be into an entirely different and far more vexing territory. I would likely be financially penalised for a genuine error not of my making, and ironically, because there are fines now to be gathered, my green bin would probably definitely have been tipped into the truck, so the Big Brother camera could record the two tiny pieces of chipboard on the top of the pile of legitimate recyclables flowing out of my bin. Now viewers, I pose this very simple but nonetheless vital question. What if we were dealing with a household in which two elderly people live, and one or other, or even both for that matter, may be suffering to some degree from either early onset dementia or Alzheimer's? I don't need to elaborate further on this. I think you know where I'm going. There is no question in my mind that the organisation we are considering here is one which clearly has a major arrogance problem, and which is actually being allowed to lose the run of itself. As we move towards conclusion in this examination of the current pay-by-weight, refuse and proposed bin fines controversy, we need to also bear in mind that yet more cost on top of the above is set to likely also come our community's way. Talk now in government circles seems to be of setting up a regulator to oversee the waste management industry. Where do we think that the funds are likely to come from to underpin such a new position, if not in whole or in part from more taxation? Where else? So, having considered all of the foregoing in this film, the question which individually viewers must now answer is, Should the private business corporate lobby group, that is, the Irish Waste Management Association, be facilitated in their pay-by-weight, more profits please begging bowl, and indeed in their attempted taking the law into their own hands in relation to bin fines, etc., or not? If your answer is no, then you need to be making written submission on this matter without further delay to your local public representative. Full email details, etc., for 32nd Dáil TDs follows in the next sequence. Please pause your film here and take a note of this URL. Type it into your browser command line and you'll be taken to an Oireachtas site page which lists all TDs in alphabetical order and provides all necessary contact details. If you consider the URL as displayed to be too long or too awkward to use, then simply browse using the following shorter URL, which will take you to the Oireachtas homepage. And the URL is as follows: http://www.oireachtas.ie/parliament/ and the word Oireachtas is spelt OIREACHTAS. Once again, that's http://www.oireachtas.ie/parliament/. At the home page, hover over the tab TDs and Senators. In the drop-down, click on TDs. When the page is displayed, scroll down and click on the link TDs alphabetical, and you will be presented with the required full listing. Thank you for having taken the time to watch this video. Hopefully you may have found the subject matter to have been either interesting, informative, educational, or perhaps all of the above. If you feel the presentation worthy of a thumbs up, then great. That would indeed be much appreciated. Feedback via the comment section below would also be appreciated.